A guide to using these ideas. Asking question and noticing clues. In 2018, researchers at Harvard began recording hundreds of people having conversation with friends, strangers and co-workers, hoping to shed light on the question. How do people signal what they want to talk about? How, in other words, do we determine what's this really about? The participants in the experiment spoke face to face and over video calls. They were provided with some suggested subjects to start. What do you do for work? Are you a religious person? But were you allowed to meander across topics? Afterwards, they were asked if they enjoyed their discussion. The answer for many were essentially no. People had tried to change the subject, had hinted they wanted to talk about something new, had indicated when they were bored, had introduced new topics. They had experimented with different approaches, but their partner had failed to notice. The clues that someone wanted something different from a conversation were obvious. The researchers found once people knew what to look for, but in the rush of talking, those clues were also easy to miss. When someone says something and then laughs afterwards, even if it wasn't funny, it's a hint they are enjoying the conversation. When someone makes noises as they listen, yeah, interesting, it's a sign they are engaged. What linguistics call back channeling. When someone asks follow up questions, what do you mean? Why do you think he said that? It's a clue they are interested, whereas statements that change the subject, let me ask you about this other thing, or hints they are ready to move on. Although people filled their conversational speech with information about their topic preferences, the researchers later wrote their human partner failed to pick up on many of those cues or ignored them. And they were slow to act on them. Taken together, our results suggest that there is ample room for improvement. These findings aren't exactly shocking. Of course, we are all experienced this before. We have all experienced this before. Sometimes people don't notice the signal we are trying to send because they haven't trained themselves to pay attention. They haven't learned to experiment with different topics and conversational approaches. But learning to pick on these clues and conduct these kind of experiment is important because they get at the second rule of learning conversation. Second rule: share your goals and ask what others are seeking. We achieve this in 4 ways: by preparing ourselves before a conversation, by asking questions, by noticing clues during a conversation, and by experimenting and adding items to the table. Preparing for a conversation. Now, what's this really about conversation often occurs at the start of a discussion. And so, we are well served to do a bit of prep work before a dialogue begins. Researchers at Harvard and other universities have looked at exactly what kind of prep work is helpful. Participants in one study were asked to jot down a few topics they would like to discuss before a conversation began. This exercise took only about 30 seconds. Frequently, the topics were written down never came up once the discussion started. But simply preparing a list, researchers found made conversations go better. There were fewer awkward pauses, less anxiety, and afterwards, people said they felt more engaged. So, in the moment before a conversation starts, it's useful to describe for yourself. What are two topics you might discuss? Being general is okay. Last night's game and TV show you like. What is one thing you hope to say? What is one question you will ask? Prepare for the conversation. Talk about last night's game. Mention new job. Where spending vacation. Jot down a few topics to discuss. The benefit of this exercise is that even if you never talk about these topics, you will have them in your back pocket if you hit a lull. And simply by anticipating what you will discuss, you are likely to feel more confident. Once this exercise becomes second nature, and it quickly will, you can make your preparations even more robust. What are two topics you must want to discuss? What is one thing you hope to say that shows what you want to talk about? What is one question you will ask that reveals what others want? Asking questions. There is a quiet negotiation at the heart of what's this really about? Conversation that emerges when we need to make a decision or set a plan. Sometimes it's quick. A friend says, "We gotta talk about the schedule for Saturday," and you reply, "Okay," and the negotiation is done. For more meaningful and complex conversations, however, that negotiation is longer and more subtle. We might start with pleasantries, then move to an easy topic, the weather or a friend in common, and eventually arrive at what we actually want to discuss. I was wondering if you might consider investing in my new company. Regardless of how these negotiations unfold, there is a common format. Someone will make an invitation, and their partner will accept or make counter invitations. Sometimes we want other to go first. The easiest way to do that is by asking open-ended questions, just as Dr. Erdai did with his patients. And open-ended questions are easy to find if you focus on asking about someone's beliefs or values. How would you decide to become a teacher? How did you decide to become a teacher? Asking someone to make a judgment. Are you glad you went to law school? Asking about someone's experience. What was it like to visit Europe? These kind of questions don't feel intrusive. Asking, "How did you decide to become a teacher?" doesn't seem overly personal, but it's an invitation for someone to share their beliefs about education or what they value in a job. Are you glad you went to law school? Invite someone to reflect on their choices rather than simply describing their work. Open-ended questions can be shallow or deep, but as the next chapter explains, questions about values, beliefs, judgment, and experiences are extremely powerful and easier to ask than we think. Ask questions. How do you decide to become a teacher? Ask about beliefs, values, judgment, and experiences. Notice clues during conversation. In other conversations, rather than wait for our companions to express their needs and goals, we might seek first to express our own. At those moments, when we extend an invitation, we need to talk about the schedule for Saturday, or "I was wondering if you might invest in my company." How the other person responds is important, and so we need to train ourselves to notice what might go unsaid. Some important things to pay attention to. Do your companion lean towards you, make eye contact, smile, back channel, interesting, or interrupt? Those are signals they want to accept your invitation. Interruptions, contrary to expectations, usually mean people want to add something. Do they become quiet, their expressions passive, their eyes fixed somewhere besides your face? Do they seem overly contemplative? Do they take in your comment without adding thoughts of their own? People often misperceive these responses as listening. but they usually aren't. In fact, as the next few chapter explains, listening is much more active. These are signals that someone is declining our invitation and wants to talk about something else, in which case you need to keep searching and experimenting to learn what everyone wants. Notice clues. Are they leaning in and showing interest, or looking away and passive? It's easy to miss these reactions, in part because speaking takes up so much of our mental bandwidth. But if we train ourselves to notice these clues, it helps us answer what's this really about. Experiment by adding item to the table. When someone declines our invitation, we might feel stuck. At such moments, it's useful to remember the lesson of interest-based bargaining. Get creative. Start experimenting with new topics and approaches until a path forward is revealed. The same way John Bowley introduced a new way of thinking about public safety to draw in call. We can figure out which new topic and approaches might be fruitful by paying attention to has someone told a story or made a joke. If so, they might be in an empathetic logic of similarities mindset. In this mindset, people aren't looking to debate or analyze choices. They want to share, relate, and empathize. Or are they talking about plans and decisions or evaluating options? Have they brought up politics or finances or choosing a place for next year's vacation? Is Maine or Florida better in June? If so, they might be in a more practical logic of cost and benefits mindset, and you are better off getting analytical yourself. Listen for attempt to change the topic. People tell us what they want to discuss through their non sequiturs, asides, and sudden shifts, or put differently, through the experiments they conduct. If someone asks the same question in different ways, or if they abruptly introduced a new subject, it's a sign they want to add something to the table, and we would be wise to let them proceed. Finally, experiment. Tell a joke. Ask an unexpected question. Introduce a new idea. Try interrupting and then not interrupting. Watch to see if your companion play along. If they do, they are hinting at how they want to make decisions together, the rules and norms they accept. They are signaling how they would like this conversation to unfold. Add item to the table. Did I tell you what happened last week? Let's talk about the budget. What did you think of the game? Maine or Florida? Are people telling stories, or are they making plans? Are they changing the topic? You likely already have these instincts, but they are easy to forget. And we don't have to embrace all these tactics at once. We can gradually make them part of our conversation until eventually negotiation over what's this really about feels natural.